So I want to start, as we always do, with our opening prayer. So I invite you right now to just join me by closing your eyes and taking a deep breath in. And as we breathe in and breathe out, let's just relax into this present moment as we come together today here on Zoom, which is such a wonderful opportunity to be able to connect, to be with each other, even when weather situations make it difficult to move around outside. And we just affirm this truth that we are here in one divine mind, one divine spirit, and that we are this very expression of oneness. And as we relax into this present moment, we just come together for the highest and best good of each and every person that joins us this morning, whether they join us later or today as we're doing this in live. And we know and affirm the truth that God is always present in every situation, God the good. And so it is. Amen. And I just want to welcome everybody this morning. Um, we've had a bit of snow, as I don't need to tell you. So it's interesting because this is the second week now that we have not been at church. And I have to tell you that it's throwing me off in everything that I do because I'm so used to a routine. And without this routine of going to the church on Sunday, it's got me kind of out of my rhythm. So it's really good today to be able to connect with each and every person who's here online right now. I also want to just invite you to remember that we are self-sustaining, and so being closed for 2 Sundays can put a little bit of a damper on our collections. So I want to remind you that even though we're not passing a basket around in church, that you can participate this morning by just going onto the donate button on the website and making your Sunday contribution. We would so appreciate that. And the other thing I just want to remind us, and we always talk about this, I talk about this every Sunday, that we are interconnected, that we are one, that there is the divine in us that sees and beholds the divine in each and every one of us. And from that, I want to just read a little quote that I read the other day from a Christian mystic. Wrote down the quote and not the name of the mystic, but it just really spoke to me. Although I am not God, I'm not other than God either. Although I am not you, I am not other than you either. Although I am not the earth, I am not other than the earth either. And I think that's a beautiful reminder of what our oneness means. And I think it's just so easy in life, just the human part of us, to forget this. So to hear it, to be reminded of it, is, I think, so important as we move along on our journey of being awake. And now I'm going to turn it over to our platform leader, Nancy, who's going to take it from here.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here. I'll begin with our statement of faith. There is only one presence and one power in the universe, and in my life and affairs, God the Good. The daily word reading today is on release. I'm distracted by two beautiful red cardinals fighting over my bird feeder. Um, Releasing the past, I make room for the future. My life experiences have provided me with many gifts, from joyous to painful. I've taken something from each one, a nugget of wisdom, understanding, solace, that have helped me evolve into the person I am today. I am always growing, always changing. With gratitude, I receive the blessings while letting the painful memories go. I have no room for regret. I do not dwell on things I have no power to change. As I release unwanted thoughts and unpleasant memories, I free myself to enjoy a new experience and create a beautiful, lasting memories. With an uncluttered mind and an unburdened heart, I embrace the present moment, and eagerly create my bright, beautiful future. The scripture is Ecclesiastes 3:6. A time of seek, a time to lose, a time to keep, a time to throw away. Our affirmation: I release resistance and accept oneness with all that God is. I release resistance and accept all that God is.
Thank you, Nancy. So today, what I want to do is start by talking about the monk's journey. How many of us got to go out and actually stand in the presence of the monks as they were doing this big walk? What speaks to me about this at this moment is the topic for this morning is radical compassion. And as I look at the journey of the monk walking through from Texas to Washington, D.C., what I am witnessing, and I apologize for my voice, it's been kind of giving me a little bit of an issue here. But as I watch the journey of these monks, there's a lesson that it's teaching me. And the lesson that it's teaching me is nonviolent communication. We are in a period right now when we look around our country and we see so much chaos and wars going on, conflicts going on, protests that have turned violent in cities in our country. And to witness these monks quietly walking, not bringing anything with them, just walking along in a quiet statement of peace. They do stop at the different centers and talk about peace, but what has happened is it has become a movement that so many in our country are sharing. They're sharing it by coming out in force to support the monks. They're sharing it by watching the journey that you can tune into and be a part of, and by just seeing how all the different people, we don't know who they are, but what they are doing is they're coming out in oneness. So they may be on different sides of the political story. Who knows? Because this is speaking from a spiritual point. They're not advocating a yes or a no. They're here to talk about peace. The other part of the journey that was interesting too is that people have come with flowers and they hand the monks the flowers and they get to experience the joy of giving. And as the monks walk along, they tend to then hand the flowers to other people that are lining the path. And so the people get to receive the joy of receiving as well. And one of the things in thinking about this, wonderful, wonderful journey is we have witnessed other spiritual leaders that have walked in a way that was nonviolent, that was just standing for a truth, standing for a spiritual truth. And they made tremendous impact. I believe this walk that the monks are doing are part of a spiritual shift that I'm starting to feel that's bringing some hope and some faith, renewed faith that we can find a way forward in this time of chaos. And we can do it the way we are being exposed to nonviolent, let love lead. The other part of this story that's interesting to me is that there's a part of this um, in the Bible, in the New Testament, when Jesus invites 72 disciples to go out before him. And the instructions he gives them is to leave everything behind, to not even take their sandals, to not take anything, to just go out and walk to the areas that Jesus is planning on visiting, relying entirely on the kindness of others, which is what the monks have been doing also. They've been being invited into places for shelter and food, and he he instructs them, the Jesus instructs the disciples that on this journey, what they're being called to do is to not engage with those that are greeting them with protest or with anger or pushing away, to just dust off their sandals and continue on. So this is an interesting theme to me in how we look at these messages, these spiritual messages from a Buddhist perspective, because the monks are Buddhists, and the Christian perspective, because to me, they're a shadow side of each other. And we're working right now on a book that is Radical Acceptance by Tara Brach, who's a Buddhist practitioner. And the lessons that we're learning in this so support the path that Jesus guided us on as well. The difference I think that I see is that with Buddhism, it's more of a introverted experience. It's really about going within. Um, it's looking at how do we see everything? How do we see? Whereas what Christianity has done with Jesus's message, I think Jesus's message is the same. With the Beatitudes, he starts right out with how do we be? And I'll get into that a little bit more. There's so much similarity that in the path to waking up. But with Christianity, we as a society, the Western society, is very external. It's about what are we doing? How are we showing up? What do we believe? And I think that's where we put the emphasis on Jesus's teachings. What do we believe? As opposed to how do we be? So this going back and tapping into these different ways that are paths to truth, I think open us to help us to expand, help us to have a broader understanding of what the spiritual journey is about. This is also what Charles and Myrtle Fillmore did back in the late 1800s. I think it was 1886, with their early publications. They were publishing Bhagavad Gita. They had uh, articles and pamphlets on yoga and meditation. They went to the first interfaith organization, religious meeting in Chicago. So they were always open to looking at truth wherever it showed up, because they believe that if it's true, It's always true. So one of the things that I wanted to talk a little bit about today, in order to understand how do we how can we reach a place where we might be able to do something like the monks were doing, walk without getting triggered. How can we walk through life without getting triggered? Um, and that is to me what we're doing with this class that we're taking right now, radical awareness, because there's Tara Brach talks about the fact that there are two wings to radical awareness. So those of you that are in the class may remember this. We've already talked about this, but one of those wings is mindfulness, and the other wing is compassion. The other wing is compassion. So the process of waking up, of getting in touch with what's going on inside of us, what we're feeling, our ego, dismantling our ego, is the path to waking up. And I'm going to use our Buddha story, the actual story of Siddhartha becoming Buddha, to see if we can understand how this leads us to compassion. That's where I want to start. Next Sunday, we're going to go a little bit deeper into compassion and kindness. Today, we're going to look at what we're going to try to see if we can open up to a broader idea of what are we really talking about with compassion. So to start with the story, Siddhartha is a prince, and he is the sages of the time have said he's either going to be a holy man or he's going to lead as a king like his father. And the king hears this, so he wants to keep his son in the castle, in this protected area, because he wants him to follow in his footsteps. So he removes anything that has to do with pain and suffering, disease, hunger, all of those kind of things, and keeps this a palace of everything is beautiful and wonderful. So I want to just invite you to think about this for a moment. How many of us tend to want to just keep ourselves in a situation where we're looking for joy, but maybe we're looking for it from whatever circumstances we decide to try to get to in our life. In other words, maybe it's, oh, if I pursue a great job and have lots of money, then I'll be full of happiness and joy and freedom. I think that's been a pretty big, when we look at our path of consciousness, this has been a consciousness that has been captured here in the Western society for the last several decades, is all about what we're doing, achieve, get the right education, get the right job, have enough money, making sure you're okay so that you'll be okay regardless of what happens. And I think we're in a place now where we're shifting that. I hope we're in a place where we're shifting that, where we're able to realize, and this is what we're talking about when we start our talks each Sunday, about our oneness, our interconnectedness. And so but that is really what Siddhartha was experiencing. He was experiencing all the pleasures in life. And so at one point, though, he goes out and he sees some of the pain and suffering in the city. And when he sees this pain and suffering in the city, it has a tremendous impact on him. He goes back to his castle and makes a decision that he is going to leave. So he leaves everything behind him and he goes out into the world. And now he is going with the different ascetics that are out there, and he's embracing the pain and suffering physically and emotionally. He's not eating, he's not sleeping, he's just physically and emotionally draining himself. He reaches a point where he becomes very sick from this experience, and he's also realized it hasn't transformed him. So the first part of the stepping out though into the world and getting in touch with the pain and suffering is the breakthrough of denial. It may be a part of our journey. I want to intersperse in here just a parable, just to kind of use this Buddhism and Christianity idea as interlocking. I'll take us to the parable of uh, the prodigal son, and he wants to claim his inheritance. This is like the author in the palace. He's goes off to just satisfy all of his senses, and then he starts to experience the same thing, all of this physical and emotional pain and suffering. He's depleted. And again, these are parables, these are allegories, these are messages that are that aren't just stories that, oh, that's interesting. It's interesting what happened to Siddhartha. It's interesting what happened to this prodigal son. No, there are messages that if we just follow the sense consciousness, that is not, we're here in this human form to experience, because we are both spiritual and human, divine and human. And so this is the process of waking up. This is what the Buddha was is showing us the process, and this is what Jesus is telling us with this parable, how we wake up. So now the Buddha, to go back to his story, what he does is he continues on after that, and he lays down and he has a dream. He remembers a time in his childhood when he was taken by his nanny, and he was sat under a tree in the shade, and he watched all of the workers in the field. And as he was dreaming this and watching the workers, it touched his heart. And he started to see the suffering that the men were doing, the sweat and the tears as they worked. He saw the donkeys straining to hold the loads. He was moved to tears himself as he witnessed the pain and suffering that they experienced. And then he also looked up and he saw the beauty of nature, the sky and everything else. And he felt joy and at peace. And in that moment, he realized that he could experience both. He could experience the pain and suffering of the world and still feel joy and peace. So, to go to our parable, where that ties in, the prodigal son has been stripped of all money from his own use and abuse of his goods. He's been reduced to being a pig farmer. And all of a sudden, he has a thought: I can go home. I can go home. Now he goes home humbly. He doesn't say, I'll go home and reclaim my role in my father's home, which has servants and everything is wonderful and good. I will go home humbly. And if I can at least be accepted as a servant, I will be fine. And this going home, it to me represents what the Buddha experienced. He went home. He went back to that time in his life when he was able to see both the pain and suffering and the joy. And so the prodigal son goes home. And as we remember in the story, the first thing the father does is runs out and greets him and says, welcome, welcome home. Father, we talk about what are the metaphysics of this, and the Father is the metaphysics of God, the spirit within. We can always go home. We can always turn within. We can always connect, as the Buddha did in that moment, to the joy and the beauty that is within us. Now, I'm not going into any more of the story here, but the Buddha goes on to sit under the tree, the Bodhi tree, and he has this whole internal war that he wages with the demon Mara, where he is forced to look at all of envy, fear, anger, all of these different aspects of his ego. And he stays conscious to that. And that is how he is transformed. That is how he is awakened to the divine nature within him. And in our book that we're working with in Radical Acceptance, those are the paths and the techniques that we're learning. That is where Buddhism, in what I said before, how it tends to be more internal, more introspective, more of a journey about how do we be. That is the Buddhist practice gives us lots of practices, lots of tools in order to help us learn and tap into getting free from the constraints of the ego and opening to our divine nature. The spirituality of Christianity has focused more on what Jesus was saying. How do we worship Jesus instead of how do we become transformed? So if we look, though, at Jesus's message, he clearly tells us the very same message. When we pray, go to your secret place and close the door in silence. Your Father already knows what you need. You don't have to tell him. Jesus says to us, love. Love is our true nature, that we are one with God and that we need to love. And compassion is love. In Buddhism, they call it the flavor of love. I love that. The flavor of love. It's the juiciness of love, compassion. It's not just the energy, it's the juiciness. So, what does compassion call us to do? What does compassion call us to do? I think that might be a great discussion question for us to jump back to at the end of this talk. For me, what compassion calls me to do is it calls me to first take these steps that are necessary to awaken me to my true nature, because I am reminded all the time in our unity principles that just the principle of this, that thoughts held in mind produce after their kind, that what I'm focusing on is what is going to materialize in my world. I like to say, I cannot give what I don't have. I cannot give away. I cannot, if I don't know who I am, how can if I don't know that I am love, how can I share love? You know, we like to think that we love, and it's probably easy to love if we have children. Not everybody, because unfortunately we hear of these situations as well. But for most of us, I think loving your child wakes you up to love, because there's an invitation to just be unconditional love, because a child just needs so much, and it wakes up something in our heart of who we really are, this true nature that we are, to want to be love, to want to radiate love out. And then we get other opportunities through life to practice love. We get to practice love with relationships. We get to practice love with our pets. I know right now I love that I can, Molly sleeps with me in bed. That might not be what other people like to do with their pets, but I she lays on the other side of my bed and she has her head up on the pillow, and she always seems to lay facing in. So I roll over at night when I'm getting into bed and I kiss her on the nose and I say, "Good night, darling." And she loves it. And so I think it's important. I think it's important to wake us up to who we really are. Love does that. And it's important for us to give love and receive love. And one of the early parts of what we're talking about in this book, Radical Acceptance, is to first, by healing, by releasing, letting go, as Nancy was reading for us, letting go of, Buddha would call it the Mara, these demons within us. That might sound a little bit too religious for some people. I myself don't think of demons because I believe in what we just affirmed together here. There's one presence, one power in my life and in the universe, God, the good. So these are not out here somewhere uh, challenging me and threatening me. They are coming from my human side, from that wounded part of me, from that part of me that gets so rooted in fear that maybe I make you the other. I make somebody who has a different way of seeing the world. I feel threatened by this. Or somebody looks different, has different sets of values. This can become the other. And so if I'm not really looking and healing my fear, my envy, my jealousy, my anger, my not enough, I'm not enough, all of those things, I can't learn to love myself, which means I can't love unconditionally, which is the invitation that Jesus was also offering. In fact, doesn't he say to us, if you see the splinter in your neighbor's eye, first pull out the plank in your own? What does that tell us? That tells us to stop judging. That tells us that we should be awake and aware when we start to become critical, uh, judgmental, all of those kind of things, whether it's with somebody we love or we turn on the television and we hear the news and it starts to make us crazy. Before you get critical of the splinter in somebody's eye, pull out the plank in your own, because this is saying the same thing that we're being encouraged to learn in the Buddhist tradition, which is to deal with these self-created demons, these self-created defense mechanisms, these self-created protections, so that they're there because we don't want to feel pain. We don't want to deal with our insecurities. That's the natural nature of the ego. It's there to protect us. And yet it's protecting us from the very nature that we're here to wake up to and to release. And so that's inviting us to sit, to feel, to let this move through us. And as we let these emotions and these fears and these feelings move through us, we don't have to do any fixing. We become still. And that allows us, in the meditation practice, in the silence, allows us to be connected to this higher consciousness, to be in the flow of divine love, to be in the flow of surrendering. And this is the same principle that Jesus was talking about, not just with the plank, but also when the woman is the adulteress. She did wrong. She was terrible. And they bring her to Jesus because they want to condemn her and kill her. And this is actually a test for Jesus, as we remember. And the other part of this, which I think is so wonderful, is Jesus met each test, not with a judgment. He did it nonviolently, didn't he? Not with a judgment, not with a criticism, not with a direct, hey, this is against the law, or, well, it actually wasn't against the law at that time. So probably wouldn't be an argument, but he didn't do it with an argument. He didn't come back defensively. What he did was he paused. That was his first step. He paused. He became quiet. It's described that he's actually drawing something in the sand, but we don't know what that is. But he's pausing. And then he says, he who is without sin cast the first stone. It's an invitation as opposed to a condemnation. It's an invitation to look at yourself rather than a judgment, an evaluation, criticism. So we know that story too. Everyone starts to just walk away. They just leave the area. I don't know if it can be that easy in what we're doing right now, but I think that these are lessons for us today. These are lessons to help us understand that we witnessed the monks walking from Texas to Washington, D.C. And while we witnessed them doing this, we witnessed such support for this peaceful walk. We're starting to witness protests across the country that are standing up against violence in our cities. Sometimes, to me, we do have to take action as contemplation and action. One of the things that we were talking about when we were looking at the book of the Dalai Lama and Desmond Tutu, Archbishop Desmond Tutu, Book of Joy. We did a series on that. And the Dalai Lama was talking about, and remember, he came from an area where there was tremendous violence. He was displaced. He had to flee for his life over the mountains in a dangerous terrain. Now they're set up in India in a whole different area because they're not able to live in their home country. So even through all of this, he's always teaching peace. He's always teaching peaceful resolutions. And one of the things that he talked to us about in this book was mental immunity. I don't know if you remember that term. For some reason, it really resonated for me. Mental immunity, because it was really saying the same thing that we say in unity. Be aware of what you're thinking. That's the mental part. And immunity means be aware of what you're thinking and control your thoughts. You have a choice. You can control your thoughts. You don't have to become angry and act it out. You don't have to become judgmental. You can do these practices, and the practices are what we're just explaining: healing yourself, sitting in meditation, listening to our inner guidance, connecting to, they call it the Buddha nature, we call it our Christ nature, our true self, that part of us that knows our divine nature, that part of us that knows we are one. Like the little quote that I read before, I am not God entirely, but I am an expression of God entirely. Or Eric Butterworth puts it this way: I am an expression. We are in eachness of the allness. We are expressions of God. And so I want to invite us to think about this time because it's a time of change. It's a time of chaos. It's a time where a lot of things are being dismantled and remembering that what are we here for? What are we here for? I think both the Buddha and Jesus is telling us we're here for love. We're here to understand our interconnectedness. That is absolutely a message of the Buddha, that we are interconnected, that we are one. It is absolutely the message of Jesus. The Father and I are one. What I am the light, but you are the light. What I can do, you can do. That can only be an invitation for us. Understand that we too have this divine nature within. And God is absolute good. God is love. So to not get caught up in the drama of the hate, the separateness, the otherness, and to really say, I start with compassion for myself by doing these practices to wake up so I can start to bring compassion in my prayers, in my behavior, in my actions, in how I show up in everyday life. That's our invitation to compassion. And next week, like I said, we're gonna explore how we can come together more to do this. But we have to start with understanding the very nature. There was an energy, there was a consciousness that these monks brought, because like I said before, I started by talking about the power that they had as they walked across the country, drawing so many people to stand in line to come out and hear them say something, to just be in their presence. That is what love in action can feel like. It is an energy that we want. We're drawn to it. This is what we talk about as love, being this energy that unites, that lifts, that heals, that unifies. And we can start to be part of this energy too, as we do this self-healing, as we touch this compassionate love of ourselves, because again, we cannot give, we don't have. We are mirroring, always mirroring what is inside, as within, so without. And so it is. So let's take this now into meditation. I invite you to just close your eyes right now. And I'm going to do a Buddhist meditation from our book of Radical Acceptance. So let's just find a comfortable position. And let's just focus on our breath for a minute or two. Breathing in and breathing out. Breathing in and breathing out. Knowing that our breath is the bridge to this present moment. It's the way we can focus. Focusing on our breath releases us from the trance of unworthiness, from the thoughts and story. So now let's turn our attention to the hurt or grief, shame or fear that you may be feeling. You might use your breath to deepen your attention to this suffering. Breathing in and directly touching the feelings of vulnerability. Breathing out and sensing the space of awareness that holds your experience. Invite the painful feelings to express their fullness, allowing them to swell and intensify through your body and mind. Now begin offering words of care to the place within you that feels most vulnerable. You might silently say, "May I be free from suffering. May I be free from suffering." Or, as Thich Nhat Hanh suggests, say to yourself, "Darling, I care about this suffering. Darling, I care about this suffering." Your prayer might be more specific. May I be free from fear. Or may I feel safe and at peace. As you continue to offer your caring prayers, you might also place your hand on your cheek or your heart, letting the tenderness of your touch express compassion. Be aware of how your heart feels as you offer care to your suffering. Do you feel sincere, open, or tender? Or do you feel mechanical, blocked, or numb? Do you feel distant and disconnected without any judgment? Simply affirm your intention to be present and kind, and continue offering these gestures of care. If your intention to be compassionate is genuine, with time, your heart will naturally soften and open. As you extend care to yourself, notice how the sensations and feelings of emotional pain change. Do they come more intense? Do they begin to subside? Does the emotion you first felt transform into a different one? You may find that embracing yourself with kindness brings up a deep sadness. Whatever you are feeling, hold your pain with the same presence and tenderness you would offer to a beloved and frightened child. Take a deep breath in, move in your chair, and come back to this present moment. We have some time, and since this is a little less formal, what I really would like us to do is I would like to invite anybody who would like to uh, speak briefly. If we make it a brief comment, then we might be able to get enough people to have an opportunity if they would like to share what this meditation might have felt like if it was the first time you've done something like this, or what you're feeling about how you might bring compassion into your body, into your life. Either one of those. So raise your hand if you want to, if you'd like to speak up.
I'm going through this very much with my son. And you're speaking of kissing your dog on the nose and saying good night, darling. There's a tenderness coming with me with Wade. A lot of impatience, of course, at times, but realizing that the thing he needs most right now is my love and compassion. And it's touching me very deeply to do that with him. And it's quite an opportunity.
Thank you, Nancy. You know, when I was working with the foster teens, when I set up these weekly workshops, my first thought was, oh, I have so much to give them as far as our principles go, you know, that inner strength, the inner guidance and everything. And what I realized quickly in the beginning of the journey was what they really want is to just I see you, I acknowledge you, and I love you just the way you are. That is compassion. That's love. Melanie.
That brings up what I was thinking about. I made a note. Understanding was a big word for me, and just in the new year. Just not taking things so personally and seriously, and realizing that understanding is the most important gift that I can bring to any person or any situation. Just, I guess, cutting everybody slack, I guess we would say, or giving everyone a break, and knowing that everybody's doing the very best they can in the moment, which means that I can do my very best too. And the second thing that I took from this is I thought about faith, and then I thought faith without works, and the scripture says faith without works is dead, and what the script, I just looked it up, and what the scripture said was, it's great to have faith, but if someone comes before you and is hurting or is hungry, do we say, go, be warm, go, be okay? Or do we take just one step? Do we just take one step and prove our faith to lift them up in peace, or to help, or to understand, or as you said, just to see and just to hear? So those were the two things that really resonated for me. So thanks.
Thank you, Melanie. Clara.
Yes. Thinking about compassion and listening to Nancy and specifically you, Melody, what came to mind is for me would be listening. And I think listening is super, super, super important. Listening to not only what the person is saying, but listening to their body language. And I think that's something that we don't always do. I know I don't always do it, but I have found that when I can listen to a person's body language, I learn so, so much about the person because they're not always going to speak what they're feeling, but the language of the body will always say what they're feeling. So I'm thinking listening is a way to be compassionate towards another person. Listening is a way to be compassionate towards myself and towards yourself. Listening to what the body is trying to tell us. And so listening would be my thing for compassion. Just want to share that little tidbit.
Thank you, Clara. Who else wants to jump in with something that speaks to them?
I've tried to get deeper than that and look at a person and try to feel their energy and see what I can see in people. So, because that energy doesn't lie, and the more than body language, that energy and their aura and things like that, people, you can't hide that.
Thank you, Stephen. I think the body stuff is so important. That's really what we're really also being guided with this book, The Radical Acceptance, is to recognize even where in our body the different emotions are coming up. So, it's mind, body, spirit, threefold. And I think, it's important for us to not just be in the mind and not just be in the body, to see if we can learn how to do both. And I always think that our Western society is so much more mentally focused, thinking. that, what am I feeling is not an automatic go-to for most of us. Who else would like to jump in? But thank you, Stephen. That was a good insight.
I think most of the men are taught not to feel and ignore that as we
Yes.
grow up.
I think that's changing, and I'm glad that it is changing, but I think, there certainly is a generation that we're not encouraged to recognize, to give into their feelings. Although I have to say, what has come up in our group meeting is so many people are sharing that they'd love to have a broader vocabulary around feelings, to really, because I know myself, when I began my spiritual journey, which actually was 40 years ago, and I started with self-awareness, mindfulness, and meditation. And the self-awareness part was like, I didn't even know what I was feeling. So I did have a little chart that helped me to kind of expand that it doesn't have to be as radical as I'm furious or I'm fearful or whatever. There are nuances. And, just even my own experience at one point was one of the women I was working with on something in self-awareness was saying, Ellen, it's okay to say it hurts. And I remember saying, you know what? It's okay for you to say it hurts. I'm going to strangle on those words. I couldn't even go there. So sometimes our journeys need us to access these emotions and everything so that we can better understand from our intellect, because our society, again, Western society is so focused on putting in the education, putting in the information, not on sitting in meditation in silence and listening. Yes, Melanie.
Well, you gave me an opportunity. I was going to say the prayer ministry meeting is this Thursday via Zoom at 7:00. The details are on the website. And I think it's a topic that dovetails with what you're talking about, Ellen. The topic is save what? Praise everything. So we're going to talk about how we use our words and attitudes to wrap love around whatever is happening to us or through us or the world. And you don't have to be a prayer ministry member meeting. You could just come in. Anybody is welcome, and it's free. And the other thing is Hearts in Unity, our lasagna fundraiser dinner is in 3 weeks. And now I'm thinking, oh my goodness, we have to get back to church one of these Sundays so we can sign up volunteers and sell tickets. So this is our big fundraiser. Sari Ken Wave. Ken is integral to this. His wife, Betty, was our beautiful, wonderful, dear friend and fundraising team leader. And this is her favorite event. And so we are having it in her honor this year. So when we get back to church on Sunday, or you can email or call me, we need volunteers to make lasagnas and cookies and just to be a part of the fun, to help out in the kitchen and serve lasagna. And of course, we need people to buy tickets to bless our church's programs. And I can say it is a really fun event, and we're making some changes this year. And Greg is going to be a part of these awesome changes, especially with some things with the music. So it's going to be wonderful. So do be sure to put that on your calendar, Saturday, the 28th of February. Thank you for letting me say those things.
We will hopefully see each other next Sunday, if not before, at our class, at our fundraiser meeting, and we'll get that baby shower organized, like you said, hopefully before the baby. So everybody have an absolutely wonderful day and a blessed day.